Motivational Monday with Jackie O. Tonight, it is a little different. I know you see some men on the screen. Well, that's because we are talking about our men, their mental health. So this is our first Monday, Motivational Monday for the month. And we have Dr. Delvena Thomas that's here with us. And we have some other special guests. We have Clifford Bunn, who is a retired law enforcement out of Oakland, California. We'll be hearing a little bit more from him. We have Shamal Peets. He is an author. He is an ordained minister and a certified Christian counselor. And then we have Christopher Burrell. He is an entrepreneur and he is like a cow guy, a cowboy. So welcome to the show, everyone. And welcome to our viewers for being here on today. So before we get started, I want each one of the men in the order that I called your names, just to briefly introduce yourselves to let everybody know who you are besides what I said. Okay, Clifford, we'll start with you.
Okay, my name is Clifford Bunn. Retired from Oakland Police Department about 6 years ago. I was there for 17 years. Now, I moved here 5.5 years ago, and now I'm a full-time student at UT, majoring in studio art, and also an artist.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Shamal?
My name is Shamal Peets. I am an ordained minister. I'm a certified Christian counselor. I'm the author of the book Whole Again that's been out about 2 years. I was born in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. Married, I have one wife, of course, and I have 3 beautiful children. And right now I'm a inspector engineer at a engineering firm, my current place of employment. And that's basically all my information for right now.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Welcome. Okay. Chris?
I'm Christopher Burrell from outside of Houston, Texas. As Jackie said, I'm an entrepreneur. I have several endeavors going on right now, also in the cattle business, and I am glad to be here. I have a wife and 2 children.
Thank you very much. Welcome. I saw Robert hop on, Robert Burrell. Can you hear us?
I can.
Okay. We were just doing small introductions. If you can introduce yourself, please.
My name is Robert Burrell. I am the oldest brother of Jackie. Just glad to be on board. I'm an educator within the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex at a middle school. Working at other different endeavors as well. So just glad to be here.
Thank you very much for being here with us. I call him Junior, but I'm gonna call him Robert tonight. And because he is Robert Jr. And last but not least, Dr. Delvena.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I'm Delvena Thomas, a board certified psychiatrist in South Florida. My most important job is that I'm the mother of a 24-year-old Black male in America. And so besides educating him and raising my son, I operate my private practice, which includes a staff of about 16 other people, clinical and administrative. And our primary goal basically is to end the stigma of mental illness in the Black communities, but in all communities, but especially in the Black community, because we have so many unique issues out here. Before starting my private practice, which I started in about 2014-15, I worked for the Bureau of Prisons as their chief psychiatrist and medical director for about 8 years here in Miami. I'm also a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserves. I've been deployed 3 times, one of which was with Jacquie. So I met Jacquie during my last deployment in Kuwait. So happy to be here and involved in this discussion regarding race and how it affects us mentally. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. So we are going to hop right in to our discussion on tonight. And again, we are talking about our men, their mental health. And when I say our men, I mean our Black men. Okay, so the first question that I want to pose to you is, what does it mean to be a Black man, especially during this current time? And that's open for discussion for everyone to answer. Now, don't let me be the teacher and call on y'all's name.
Well, I think in this day and age, it's a really trying time. And, you know, not only are you reminded every day, every time you step out that house, that you're a Black man, and you know, you're reminded at all times. So, like I told you in the past, Jacquie, that you know, it doesn't matter that, like, you know, I retired from the law enforcement profession. You know, I drive a little right now. I drive a little Honda, and since I've been living in Texas, been pulled over 7 times. So, you know, and I feel the same fear that anyone else would fear, you know, dealing with law enforcement, especially dealing with here in Texas. So I'm reminded every day, but I'm also proud of who I am. I think this time has been a time of reflection to not only look deeper into my heritage, you know, with genealogy, but also just doing a lot more reading. So.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
But yeah, as for me, I guess you can count me as somewhat of a millennial. It's a challenge, but it's not to where I back down. I know who I am, and I love who I am. Especially being out there in the work environment, certain things that I have to encounter being my age and the things I do for a living, I have to understand and know who I am. So this time really is solidifying me as a Black, young Black male, and not to say I become disrespectful to anyone, but I respect who I am and I respect who other people are at the same time. And just knowing who I am solidifies what I'm doing, so to speak.
That's good. Thank you, Shamal. Do we have anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, to be a Black man in America today, to me, is a very special thing. You know, we've been special throughout our whole, you know, history of life. But, you know, it's some really trying times that we're in now. And so I think to be a Black man, to be a strong Black man, is very trying, because I do know we know that we can get over this. And so it's up to us as a Black men that are on here now, that I see in front of me, along with all the other Black men that are living now, to raise the generation behind us to do the right thing. You know, so I think it's really right now. You know, even though everything that's going on, it's really special to be a Black man right now.
Okay, thank you, sir. And just to let you know, so this is a conversation that we will be having. And so you guys can hop in at any time. Dr. Delvena will hop in as well, just to give your comments. So just, you know, we're just going to flow with it. So just want to let you know that we are having just a really candid conversation about what it is to be a Black man and our mental health. Our men's mental health. Robert Jr., did you want to make a comment?
Just kind of echoing what everyone else said. I mean, especially what my brother Chris said, just it is definitely a special time, and just being a Black man, understanding who you are and your identity as a Black male, and not allowing anything to what is said or what is seen to disrupt that. And so, I mean, I believe that it definitely, like what he said, is definitely a special time, but it can be a challenging time as well.
Yes. Yeah. And Delvena, what have you seen just, you know, out, because I know you've been out on the front line doing quite a bit. So what have you seen in reference to the Black men and the challenges that they're having to deal with during this time? I mean, I know that there are times all the time, but especially during this time.
I think Black men in general hold themselves to a very high standard, and they hold one another accountable. So as far as how they are as a group, they hold each other accountable. They hold one another to high standards. Black men are really trying to do the right thing, and they probably have the I guess, the biggest struggle out of all of us in terms of how America treats them. They have a lot of challenges that they've been able to overcome. The legal disparities are more apparent amongst Black men than we see in Black women. So for the most part, what I see as a unit is that they're holding one another, although all of these things are happening, they're holding one another accountable. Things like, don't allow yourself to be placed in a position, obviously with the example that I believe it was Clifford that he gave, he drives, as he said, an older car and has been pulled over still. So as much as Black men may try to avoid being targeted, they're still targeted, but they still continue to overcome and just help one another and support one another and hold each other accountable, so that we're focusing more on ourselves and not so much on everyone else and the things that we can't control. And that's what it seems to be, of course, along with the strategy that Black men are creating and trying to lead our people in the country. I don't know if you guys saw what happened at Stone Mountain in Georgia on Saturday.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm not going to assume that that was orchestrated by a Black man, but I don't know, it probably was, and not a Black woman. Maybe it was two of them, both of them, but so they are stepping up and being leaders in our country right now.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, my daughter showed me that video. I saw it just yesterday, I think it was. Yes, Sunday. So yeah, very good. And just kind of to roll right into our next question is about, we know that racism, discrimination, and inequalities, they have a significant effect on our mental health, and specifically our men, because that's who we're talking to right now. And being treated less than can, be traumatizing as well as stressful. What situations have you guys been in, or that you've experienced, or you're experiencing right now, and how did you handle that when it came down to the racism, discrimination, and inequalities? And some of you kind of talked about that just a few minutes ago, but yeah, if we can share some more about that. And also, I just want to say this too, we're talking about some issues, but we're also going to bring in the solutions. So we want our viewers to know that we're talking about that, but we are going to have some solutions that we want to bring to the table and resources. Okay, so yes, now the floor is open.
Jackie.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. Can you state the last part of that of the question, please?
Yes. So I was saying, how have you been coping or handling these issues, in reference to racism, discrimination, and inequality? What have you experienced in your own personal life? And if you have experienced anything, how did you handle it? How were you coping with it? Because we know that these things can have a significant effect on us, or on you as a Black man. So how are you dealing with that?
Well, yes, I have experienced it when I was younger. I'm in my latter 40s now. So, in my earlier up to present, I haven't experienced it very much, just because I never put myself in that situation. I know what goes on, but I try to keep myself away from it if at all possible. So most of my experiences were when I was younger, latter high school years, early 20s. And I handled it very differently then, because I was a younger man and, didn't understand what I understand now. And so then, I may have got a bit combative over it, not to the point where it's going to cause an altercation, but, just verbal combative. And, but then the way things are handled now, of course, wasn't handled, 30 years ago. And so for me, it's hard to equate how it was then to how it is now, because I haven't experienced it now. But, I handled it fairly well, I believe, during that time period that I was in. But I see the young men and the grown men now. It seems as if somebody just, turned the key, and the racism has always been here, just been, underneath in some areas, And then, once the officers change over, it's just, with the stroke of the wrong word, and the wrong people hear that word, it just started something that probably our that could equate probably to our generation before us. To me, I wasn't around back then, but just from what I read, a lot of books and seen, I think it's just as bad now maybe as it was back then. The solution, Jackie, could be a million different solutions. I wish I had the right answer, but I don't.
Yeah, that's good.
I think my experience was a specific instance. Back in the 90s, I was at work. This was prior to becoming working in law enforcement, and it was at our city courtyard. And individual, another coworker I didn't know, turned around and he's like 30 feet away wearing a white pillowcase over his head. Not to tell you what that means. And he turned around, walks back inside. So he comes back out a few minutes later, doesn't say anything, walks to his car. So, I was raging, and, I really just wanted to put hands on him. But, I was a little, I guess at that point I was in my 30s. So I got a little smarter. And I also had, my two young daughters at the time. And so next day I ended up just going to human resources, reporting the incident, and ultimately the guy ended up getting fired. So I learned a lot from that instance. The first thing you have to do is try to take the proper recourse, because if I'd overreacted to that situation, I'd probably been the one getting walked out the door or getting arrested. So that's a specific incident I can think of.
Yeah, that's good.
I had one similar to what Brother Clifford was talking about. I got to be careful because I don't know who's watching, but I had an isolated incident at work, and I was called boy. And of course, you know what that means. That's kind of dates back to slavery and all that. So I was raging. Like you said, I was mad. I wanted to hit somebody. So I said, you know what? Let me calm down. So I had to recognize that I had an emotion attached to what was said because I know the history of that word. And so I addressed it, took it to the powers that be, and the situation was handled. So this is a real thing. And that was my first time ever experiencing anything to that magnitude, and being, in my 30s. I know I could, jump on the guy and, beat him down. But again, like the brother said prior to me, I have a family to feed. Imagine if I would have handled that situation differently and allow my emotions to get the best of me. So I'm not going to pretend like it's not there, because it is there. It's hanging over our head. It's like a cloud, so to speak. But one of my avenues, so to speak, I was able to voice how I was feeling to the powers that be. They heard me and they handled the situation. So thank God that it was able to be handled, that it didn't go any further than what happened. But this is out there. This is real. And with cooler heads have to prevail. And then we just have to, and for my instance anyway, I had to think, what can I do so that I don't put myself in a situation that I can't get out of. I don't want to blow it to where I put myself in danger because I'm angry or what was said. So yeah, that was my experience.
That's good.
And as far as with me, I've had experiences, and I think what Mr. Peets said, I believe that the cooler heads, as far as solution, does definitely have to prevail. And I just want to say this as far as being open when we're looking at especially Black and males dealing with the police. It's very, to me, it's important that sometimes we don't address that we need to definitely have a rational mindset when we're dealing with the police, because there's sometimes you can definitely agitate or aggravate them to go into a particular mode. And so us knowing how to address them, how to address how to give a voice to it, and then knowing that our voice at that particular time in that particular situation, not allowing it to take control of the situation, allowing us to say some things we shouldn't say, and allowing us to pursue the justice and the legal system and pushing it to where it needs to be and allowing our voice to get there. Because sometimes I just had a young male just a couple of weeks ago, just last week, matter of fact, he was 16 years old. Again, I'm in the educational system. He was killed because he did not, as far as his interaction with, he was in a gang and with police. So if he would have, like Mr. Peets said, had a cool head and interacting with them, it would have been, I believe it would have been a different result. But we have to really, to me personally, teach our young males, how do you interact? Because you can kind of go off, you can say, okay, this, you can go off and say this and say that. But at the end of the day, if you keep a cool head and you allow the justice system now, I'm not saying the justice system is not broke, because it is broken. It needs to be reformed. And that's where we are today. We're trying to reform that system. And I've said before, I'm also a senior pastor, and I've said before that one of the things that needs to happen, if you're going to have a voice, you need to be at the table in order to address and have a voice for those that are making decisions. If you're not at the table, then you can't have a voice. And if they don't give you a seat at the table, then you have to be able to create your own seat at the table and bring a voice to whatever the issues are. So a lot of times we're saying what we need to say as far as African Americans or now people of color, but we have to be able to be in those particular areas, particular vocations. And if you're gonna have a voice, say what needs to be said, but you have to be able to infiltrate those areas to say what needs to be said in order to have a voice. So I've had particular experiences in particular areas being pulled over by the police. Yes, but I mean, I believe a lot of Black males have experienced that. But at the same time, as Mr. Peets said, you have to keep a calm head, knowing where you are, teaching African American males, because the reality is you have some police. And let me say this, they're not just white police, they're also our own Black police that are same as a white, that are trigger happy. I mean, they just don't know how to deal with particular behaviors. And so there's some things that we have to teach them. And I think when we teach them to know how to handle those situations when you're in those, then how do you move forward? I think that will help our, especially our younger generation.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And with that being said, so that's what we're teaching, because all of us, I think pretty much on here have sons, but Shamal and Cliff, but you even have to probably tell your daughters the same thing, though, I mean, not just the sons anymore, you gotta have that same conversation with the daughters. Delvena, did you want to hop in on that?
Well, that's one of the things also that causes our people more added stress than the people who are in the majority, than white folks, because we have to actually strategize in how to live. We have to teach our children racism and teach our children how to remain calm and stay alive, because the police officer who's there to protect them may kill them. And so, that's one of the things I'm sure we'll segue into, is how do all of these experiences affect us mentally, but also physically. Just listening to the gentlemen all kind of talk and share their own experiences, they've all basically, to avoid a situation that was brought on by racism, they had to do things outside of what's considered typical, just to survive, to continue to get a paycheck. I believe it was Christopher who mentioned feeling like he could become combative. I I think it was Christopher, when he was telling his experience. And so that sensation, that adrenaline rush of becoming angry because you know that you're being treated unfairly, but then yet talking yourself through and reminding yourself of what you could lose if you're not able to remedy that. You know, the requirement of being strategic and coping and dealing in your situation, like Mr. Burrell mentioned, Robert mentioned. I think Mr. Peets, you said something about being careful in telling your story because you don't know who's watching. So it's like we get hit in every aspect of racism. We're treated unfairly to begin with. And then once we're treated unfairly, although we're the victim, then we have to think of something fast, quick, on our feet on the spot to try to remedy that situation that won't cause us a negative outcome. And then even after the experience, we have to be careful because we don't know who's watching. So all of these situations are the reason why we have a lot of the healthcare disparities that we have in our communities. You know, when I listen to physicians and medical practitioners of the majority, they talk about our high blood pressure and our heart attacks and strokes. And what they mention the most are diets and lack of exercise, but they don't ever mention the daily constructs of dealing with racism. As these gentlemen just describe all aspects of that, not just the insult itself, but the things after the fact. And even probably Mr. Pete, that happened to him maybe some years ago, and he still has to strategize in how he shares his experience.
Yeah, yeah. That is, wow. That's just say, just wow. You know, and even in that, you know, how you process it. And you're right, you have to strategize it, you have to process it, and just kind of have a plan in place on how to do that. And that just kind of takes us into about mental health. And, you know, how do you see mental health? You know, when you hear that, those two words, mental health, what do you think? You know, because there's a stigma that goes with that with those two words. But we know that our health, our mental health is affected every day just by some of the things that you guys have just explained. So when you hear that word, and this question is to the gentleman, what do you think of when you hear mental health and that you need to have good mental health?
Well, for me, that term evolved, evolved for me over the years. I mean, like I've told you in the past, you know, at work, you know, when anything came about a therapist or seeing a therapist, it was like, no one wanted to be caught seeing a therapist, you know, which is something that we even had one attached to our department, but no one wanted to go, but everyone needed to go because people would do it just after work, they go down to the bar, and that's the way they handled their stress. But for me, I was forced to seek therapy and deal with my mental health 9 years ago. I lost my son to suicide 9 years ago. And I got to a point where I was forced to having to deal with this because, you know, trying to, and also realizing that you need help, because I realized it was something that I couldn't handle by myself. I couldn't get through it by myself. And so it really helped a lot. I mean, I really got involved, and I dealt with a therapist. I dealt with a peer support group of parents who lost their kids to suicide, and both really helped. But it got to a point where it was almost too much over time. So I dropped the peer support group, but continued with the therapy. So that really helped a lot. And I like to think that I'm here today because of that. And then that's around the time when I discovered art, that something I did as a child, but I discovered art again. And that started out as a therapy, and therapy for me to cope with things. But now it's evolved to a way of life.
And let me ask you this, when you said the therapy, what do you feel about faith and therapy?
I think it has to be it has to be the right combination. I've had therapy before, like from through my church in the past, and it didn't work out too well. And so it has to be the right combination. Just like when you're choosing a therapist, you have to find the right therapist. Sometimes you may find one and it just doesn't work out, whether they're not allowing you to talk enough, they're talking too much. So I think you just have to find the right one.
Okay. Shamal, we can't hear you. No. Your audio is on, but we can't hear you talking.
There you go. Oh, we had it for a second.
Okay. You know, as he's working on that, I was thinking of, well, not thinking, as I was just kind of researching on this topic and just watching different videos about things. One thing that stuck out at every video that I watched was when it talked about mental health and therapy, was the Black man, especially the Black man, did not think that that was a good thing. And they went to the church. So that's why I asked about faith, because they were more in tuned, I guess you could say, to go to church and talk to the pastor or get prayer or whatever it was versus therapy. Shamal, are you back with this? No. We still can't hear you. So I want to get y'all's feedback on that, because some people do need to have therapy, and they also, their faith is also tied into that. So what do you think about that? So we're still answering the question about the mental health and your faith. Okay, I think
Jack, that's so I definitely have a lot of faith and believe in God and my higher power and Jesus. And you know, religion is one of those things that, and spirituality, that I feel are a key to my maintaining a balance on a daily basis, besides living healthy from a physical standpoint or mental standpoint with the diet and the exercise. But I think from talking with some of my patients, a lot of times they are embarrassed about seeking psychotherapy when they are a part of the religious community, because mental illness is seen as a punishment, or it's seen as, you know, it means that you didn't have enough faith in God, that you're experiencing the sadness, this depression, or you're having these panic attacks because you don't pray enough, or you don't call upon Jesus enough, or you just don't have any faith. And I've just had several patients convey that to me based on their experiences in their church, including a pastor. A Black female pastor who was suffering from panic disorder, which is basically recurrent panic attacks. And she suffered for years before she finally decided to see someone. She came to see me, and that process was a challenge because she was so embarrassed about needing medication. And as conservative as I am as a prescriber, you know, I don't just throw medications at people. We also offer psychotherapy and other modalities. That was a struggle for her. This is a woman who was in her early 60s and very involved with the church since she was a child. As I said, she was a pastor. And so it's just that having a mental illness or mental health problem is that we don't have faith, or that we're not praying hard enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that as well. Shamal, are you there?
Is it on now?
Okay.
All right, good, yes. Great. Yeah, well, Jacquie, I think you know some of my story and how, you know, 10 years ago, I was gonna jump off a bridge, ready to commit suicide. And what I thought was a moment of chaos was actually years of suppressed emotions. And for me, mental health is my, you know, my emotional well-being, my psychological well-being. How am I handling those two things? How can I make the difference between my mind and my emotions? Because up until that point, when I was 23 years old, I didn't know what it meant to cry. right? Because, you know, my mother, I love her dearly and God bless her, you know, she's still alive, but she was raising a young man by herself. She can't raise me to be, she didn't know how to raise a man, right? So when I would get disciplined, I was very mischievous. So when I got disciplined, she would tell me, you know, stop crying or don't cry, right? So over the years, I associated with pain with not crying. So can you imagine the years of every time I felt some kind of pain or any kind of discomfort or any kind of anguish, I was associated that with shutting it down and being quiet and or shutting down, being still or running away. And it came out in different ways. So I had to learn. So over the years, as the doctor was saying, uh, I thought I was taught, you know, you pray and it's gonna go away, right? So I was praying and praying and nothing seemed to happen. I was active in the church when I was about to jump off a bridge. It was only until I recognized, okay, I need to try something different. I need to see, because I mean, there's nothing against the church. I love the church. As an ordained minister, I got to be a part of the church. But the issue is that there are other avenues. Once I finish praying, I have to get up and deal with what's going on in front of me. This is reality. This is real. And there are some things that I had to deal with as it relates to my mind and my emotions. So mental health, especially in us young black men, young black males, is very important because, you know, we're taught to be so tough and be so dynamic and be so strong, and yet we don't know when it's time for us to be weak. We should be allowed to have weak moments when we're crying and vulnerable enough to where I don't become implosive and I take out all my, you know, when I want to release out on somebody in a negative way. So that's, to me, that's very important as it relates to mental health on that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think that in reference to what the doctor said and what Mr. Pete said, that sometimes within the, if you will, a church circle, you think that a pastor, even though he may or she may be a pastor, that they have, just because they are who they are and they study the Word of God, that they have the skill set, if you will, to deal with mental health. And many of them have not gone to school to do that. They don't have any expertise or the skill to do that. And so as a result, they have some of the mindset that they have, but it's very important as a pastor that you understand, or as a person of faith, that it's okay to go outside of the church and seek support and seek help and assistance in order to help you with whatever mental issue that you have. I think that's one of the things in the Black church, especially growing up in the Black church, especially, and I grew up in a Pentecostal church, that, you know, you may feel that you can rebuke the enemy or you can do this and do that, and not understanding that you really do need, God has given us doctors and assistants that can help us in that particular areas, and that you should seek out that help. And that help can help many Black males, not only males, but anyone in particular. But we're talking about the Black male on tonight, that Black pastors embrace that, that they have connections and partnerships with other with doctors of mental health, that they can really reach out and send individuals to them, and not just give them some assistance from a faith perspective, but also from a health and mental perspective that can help them holistically.
Yes, I agree with that. Delvena?
I don't have anything else to add to that.
That was good.
Yes.
I have something I want to add, if that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with what they're saying. I think for a lot of people to seek help within their church, I mean, these are people that they socialize with all the time, and they portray the image that, you know, everything is normal, everything is all right. And then to come from a standpoint of being vulnerable and say, hey, I have these problems in my personal life, and you know, or whether it be my relationship or whether it be my marriage. And then also, I think that there's also sometimes in church there's a confidential thing or a lack of thereof. You know, your business comes back around and you found out that it's spread through the church. So I think that's a lot of times people are hesitant of seeking help, particularly about mental health within their church.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Chris, did you have a comment?
No, I agree with all the other men. I mean, it's kind of hard to piggyback on top of all that.
Yeah.
Very, very well said by everyone.
Yes. So we're going to wrap this up. You know, this has been a good conversation. This has to be something that's ongoing, but I do want to put this out there and ask just this last question of, so we talked about the different things that you're dealing with and how to get the help. So how can you pull together as men? So how this came about with Jackie O, because, you know, normally we do is ladies. So a man emailed me and he said, what about us? I mean, so my space is created for women, but, you know, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we can have a conversation about the men. And it was really kind of like, how can let's have a conversation about the men and y'all pulling together and just like really working together to help one another and to be the accountability partners that you need. So my question to you is, how can you do that? You know, what can you do to do that? To like really do it. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes we say, oh yeah, we're going to do this, this, and this. And we have really great intentions, but it never really kind of follows through.
I can say from my perspective, I think your brother said it earlier, the junior, I forgot his name, Robert, I think it was. But he said something on the lines of creating our own table, right? And for me, as being one of the younger generation, I look to my elder Black men for guidance. I mean, because I'm pretty sure some of the gentlemen on here can tell me things that I've never encountered or they had experienced, and creating that space to where not only do I hear them, but they also hear me. Because I think there is a clash between the younger and the older generation sometimes that causes that there's a space there that has to be filled. And as the brother said earlier, as we create that table and create the space to where one, what is shared is not used against somebody, you know, or like the brother Clifford said, or come back around and now, you know, what I shared has been around the table 20 different times, you know, that confidentiality and that respect has to go both ways. So as relates to young Black men, creating that table, have a confidential space where we can share ideas and thoughts and really get and break that stigma of talking about our emotions and how we're feeling and how I just want to break down, how I want to cry, in a clean and safe environment. That way our young Black men are not dying by suicide or by the hands of somebody else because they don't know how to properly channel how they're feeling.
That is very good.
It is.
Yeah, very good point. Did anyone else have a point? Well,
I would just add that, you know, people should seek treatment. Living in America as a minority, as an African American, an islander, a Black person, there are so many psychological insults that we endure on a daily basis that sometimes we are not even cognizant of these things that are happening to us. People talk about microaggressions as well as obvious macro aggressions, but these things have to be addressed. So folks have to realize if they're not eating the same, not loving the same, have lost some of their self-confidence or not sleeping well, seem anxious all the time, or they're afraid when they hear police sirens or ambulances, or if they hear gunshots, that, you know, maybe there's some anxiety there or nervousness. And if you've had an interaction with law enforcement or some other person that included a type of trauma that was impactful, maybe you have what's called PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder that hasn't been diagnosed. We know from studies that African Americans are 20% more likely to endure psychological distress because of being Black in America. So what we're doing with seeking treatment with a mental health professional, or there are a lot of people in the church now who are certified and licensed to provide mental health counseling. They're not just Christian counselors. Some of them have masters in clinical social work or mental health counseling. Some have PhDs. So there are a lot of qualified folks who can provide that type of intervention and still take into consideration one's religious beliefs. So just encouraging people to seek someone to talk to, a professional.
So to sum this all up, what I've heard tonight is it's okay for us to seek help. It's okay for a man to be vulnerable and for him to have emotions and to cry and not have everything all bottled up inside. It's okay. It's okay to have those moments. It's okay to go outside of the church and your pastor or whomever that may be in your church that's in that role. And it's okay to seek therapy if you need therapy. And even if not therapy, I mean, I don't know what you think about this. If you have a trusted friend, some people have just like a trusted friend, I don't know, I'm just saying that they can go to and they can talk to just to kind of help them walk through some things that they have going on. And you might have to still have therapy. And it's okay because sometimes people have to have medication. And it doesn't mean that, you're the demon or the devil. So, you just, and it's okay for that to happen. So I do want to say that Delvena has a website, which is drdelvena.help. So if you guys have not had a chance to go and take a look at that, on her resource page, she has a lot of good resources. Again, that is Dr. Delvena, which is DELVENA.com. I'm sorry, drdelvena.help. And then you can do /resources, and she has resources on everything: anxiety, depression, marriage, divorce, domestic violence, PTSD. Just everything that you could think of. There's resources there on her website. So I wanted to put that plug in so that everyone can check that out. And I don't have anything else to say. Did anyone want to say anything else before we close out?
This has been very enjoyable. I will say that.
Thank you very much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
I echo the same.
Yes, thank you very much. Christopher?
Thank you also, Jackie. Nice to meet everyone. And it's okay for us as Black men to talk to one another. Really fast. We some of us, not all of us, but some of us Black men have a hard time talking to one another. We pass each other. We don't speak to one another. So if we would just take the time to speak to one another sometimes, just really fast. I did a lot of work in the oil field. The majority of the guys in the oil field were either white or Hispanic. Very few, you see very few Black guys where I worked and the level that I was on. So when we did see each other, we spoke and had just a big conversation. A white colleague of mine, he said, "Well, Chris, did you know him?" We talked for maybe 30 minutes in the store. I said, "No, I didn't know him." I said, "Well, but I believe in talking to people, and especially my own people. I'll talk to anyone, but talk to my own Black men. So it's okay, really fast on my way out, to talk to one another.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is okay with that. One of my other brothers lives like out in West Austin, like Bee Cave area. And I remember him saying one time that because they don't see other Black people. So when they see Black people out there, you know, they're just like, kind of like Chris was saying, oh, they're just all over the place excited because they're like, oh my God, there's some, you know, Black people out here that we can talk to and we can intermingle. So yeah, it is okay. It's okay for us to talk to one another. And it's okay for you guys to talk to one another. It's okay for y'all to like get on the phone. I know y'all are not like us women. You know, we could probably be on the phone like for hours. As a matter of fact, me and my sisters were talking about that, how every week we're on the phone pretty much for like hours. And my daughters would be like, are y'all still on the phone? It'll be 3 hours later. And we're still on the phone, you know, and we just hop from one topic to the next. You know, we're just talking about random stuff. And so it's okay. I know men don't talk on the phone like that, but you know, it's okay if y'all do that every now and then, you know, kind of break that cycle a little bit.
Yeah.
So again, thank you. Clifford, were you going to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. Again, thank you all so much for being a part of our Motivational Monday. And every first Monday, well, we're starting now to have Motivational Mondays pretty much every Monday, but every first Motivational Monday of the month, we have Dr. Delvena, and she's been with us now probably for the last, I don't know, 3-4 months. We started out doing this right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so y'all hop in, we talk about different topics and that are relevant and that, you know, women need and that we need daily. So next month, yeah, be sure you hop in and you join us for Motivational Monday. And again, thank you very much to my guest and thank you to everyone that's watching. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening and your week. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye-bye.